go in there now.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting.
Grace, you have the nice background, which I don't.
Well, yours is at least very neutral. You could do a cool virtual background.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you have the Orca one that I shared? It would probably work pretty well since you have a very plain background.
Yeah, let me see.
Oh, do we have to approve each person? Hopefully we get a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. First person is here. Welcome.
Hello, Vincent.
Hey.
Okay, a few more people trickling in now. Hi, everyone.
Cool. Hi, y'all.
Hey.
We'll give it a few minutes for everybody to see the announcement and join the call.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I'll have to set up the Orca background later. I think this one will be sufficient for now.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, should I share it with the wider community now? See if we can get some more
Yeah,
people
I
in?
think so.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's shared now.
You got some folks.
Yeah, a couple of minutes until we get started. Lots of people joining the call now.
Hey, Omar. I saw a friend join.
I feel like I'm playing whack-a-mole.
I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
I think you might need the other one, Yutaro. At least to me, the Orca looks reversed. I'm never sure whether we need the reverse one or not. It kind of depends on the platform.
There definitely needs to be an option to just accept all.
Yeah. I think we can probably configure the meet next time so that anybody can join.
Okay, we've got a few dozen people here, I would say now.
Cool. Wow. People from all over the world.
Truly global.
How does this look?
Yeah, that's right now.
All right. It's backwards on my screen, but that's all right.
Yeah, I think that's how it is for me as well. It's confusing.
Oh, thank you, Smokey Vandenberg. I like the wholesome vibes.
Yeah. Vincent Wang likes your hat.
Thank you.
It's a one of a kind, basically an NFT.
Mhm.
Although Yutaro is not the owner of the killer whale, so I mean, as far as I know. Are you allowed to do that? Can you wear an NFT item if you don't own that? I think it's a little tacky.
I think this may be an exception.
You're just a fan of the killer whale, whoever that is.
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, the AMA is here. It's not in Discord. Although we are recording and we'll share it back later.
If anybody has questions, you can ping them in the chat. We won't be taking questions from voice or people's video, but yeah, feel free to share questions in the chat. Okay, we have over 50 people now.
Should I do this too? Does it look right to you? Or is it backwards?
To me, it's backwards.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
darn.
backwards.
Now it's right.
Yeah.
I guess we can match.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not possible to let people in without the pop-up. Is that right, Chris?
I think so, yeah. On this call, you have to admit every single person.
Yeah. Okay.
It's probably it could be for security reasons, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the most boring game I've played. I think we should probably get started soon, and I'll just keep on accepting people as they come in.
Alrighty, sounds good. We'll try our best. I guess it's a little hard with the thing popping up, but well, we can manage.
Yeah.
Alrighty, yeah, let's just get started. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm super happy to have all of you today. It's been a little while since I think we got to see some of you or like really speak with our community face to face, so to speak. I don't know, can you call this face to face? But in any case, I'm Ori, one of the co-founders of Orca, and today I'm here with Yutaro, my co-founder. Say
Hey.
hi.
How's it going, guys?
Yeah, I know. I think it's been a pretty exciting time lately with all of, the new announcements going out. And I know you guys are excited for what's coming next for Orca. So just thought that this would be a good opportunity for us to come on and really speak to you guys directly about all the things that we're building and the plans for what's coming ahead. I guess a little short intro. I see the questions coming in the chat already. So I'm basically focused personally on everything not on the technical side on Orca, leading our strategy team. We think about marketing, community, as well as partnership. Although my background's also technical originally, and I do all of the design and UX personally for Orca. But today we'll be mainly focusing on having Yutaro actually ask questions or answer questions. I'll just be hosting. Yutaro, do you want to introduce a little bit about yourself and what you do at Orca?
Yeah. So my name is Yutaro. I'm one of the other founders along with Ori of Orca. And currently I am doing essentially playing the engineering lead or engineering manager. We have a team of 6 engineers, including myself, and kind of just like setting the technical roadmap, including whirlpools and also kind of decentralized governance, setting the direction there along with Ori. Those are kind of my main responsibilities right now. But in terms of my background, I was heavily involved with Ethereum before I got involved with Orca. And so I have, a few years of experience just doing kind of like layer 1 protocol development for Ethereum before Orca.
Awesome. Yeah, really excited to have Yutaro specifically here, focused on answering questions on the technical side and on whirlpools. It's a pretty rare opportunity since he's usually really heads down in code and leading the Eng team. So really encourage you guys to ask questions that you might have lying around about how Orca really works under the hood. Since Yutaro will be able to handle them basically better than anyone else on the team. He also understands blockchains better than almost anyone else I know, so good opportunity to get those types of questions answered as well. Before we jump in, Yutaro, do you just want to comment a little bit on, I think it's a time of uncertainty for a lot of people as well, right? And I think a stressful time. And so I think that's something that's worth addressing as well.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of the price, the thing we'd like to, or at least I'd like to say is, one is, the price action, it's fairly out of our control in a very real sense. One reason for that is because Orca itself has fairly low liquidity, and we aren't market makers in the Orca pools ourselves, and also like macro events generally tend to affect the price more for low liquidity tokens like ours. And then in a structural sense, we don't really have much control over the price either, given the fact that we intentionally position ourselves so that we are not a security through the eyes of the SEC or any other 3-letter agency in the US. And in that sense, our focus generally is on just setting the roadmap and then adoption of the Orca DEX, specifically within the Solana ecosystem. So in terms of price, I think there are a lot of other things that can be said here too, not about the Orca token specifically, but just more generally. Obviously crypto is incredibly volatile, and it can be fairly stressful when you see a dip in the price. One thing that I generally believe is that in crypto, prices are incredibly volatile, and you can definitely see irrational price action. But my core belief is definitely that over the long term, let's say like 2 to 4 years, prices tend to kind of converge towards something that is rational and towards something where fundamentals really matter. And then also, that's kind of the reason why we believe that with Orca, it's important to just focus on adoption and focus on building a good product. That's
exactly. Yep, our focus here is really just building your go-to DEX. We hope that we'll be able to make Orca just the place that you'll go whenever you want to swap any 2 tokens on Solana. But I'm keeping an eye on the chat. I see we have a lot of questions about our plans for the year, like what Orca wants to do in 2022, etc. And so I thought maybe, Yutaro, you could just start out by giving our community a little quick overview of the roadmap for the next couple of months and what we have coming. It's pretty exciting, I think.
Sure. So, the big project that we've been talking about for a while now, which I believe is, actually a few weeks out potentially, is whirlpools. And so whirlpools, for those who are not familiar, is a implementation of a concentrated liquidity AMM. So the most famous kind of concentrated liquidity AMM is Uniswap v3. And so if you're familiar with that, you can get a sense for what it's going to look like in what whirlpools is going to look like. The part that will be similar is it will still be an AMM, except that instead of essentially being forced to provide liquidity across the entire price range, which is capital inefficient, liquidity providers can choose, each individual liquidity provider can choose what price range they want to provide liquidity in, and they can choose to provide liquidity in that price range withdraw if the price moves, or if their opinion of the price movement for that pair changes, and then reposition their liquidity. And we think that this is kind of a key next step for us to take, in the sense that we think, even like 3 to 5 years down the line, most of the trading for fungible tokens will be on these concentrated liquidity AMMs, and we want to capture that market, now, essentially.
Yeah, it makes sense. But let's say I'm just, some trader on Orca. Why do I care about this capital efficiency thing, this whirlpools thing? Like, why does it matter?
Sure. So if you are just a trader, quote, just a trader, that's
true, not just.
Yeah. So if you are a trader, and you are interested in trading tokens in the Solana ecosystem, then ultimately what you care about the most is going to be execution, as in, can I buy or sell the tokens that I want to buy or sell, and can I do it at the best price possible? And for that, we think that concentrated liquidity AMMs will provide exactly that, essentially the best price for the widest range of tokens.
Awesome. Makes sense. So I think let's jump to another question. So Malad GH asked at 9:06 a.m., hi, do you happen to have a plan for the community to be more involved in your current project or upcoming projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer is, of course, and maybe, or we can answer this together. But the next step, essentially, so, in terms of the order in which we're doing things, we wanted to get whirlpools out first. And the reason for that is pretty simple. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but we think that essentially concentrated liquidity AMMs are the future, and we want to capture that market as soon as possible. The next big initiative after that is going to be decentralized governance, and that's where we are going to prioritize even more community involvement with, So, Ori, if there's something that you want to say there.
I think that's pretty much it in terms of what we can say publicly now. I think we call this Project Atlantis internally, really focusing on getting our community heard even more than it is today, and getting more incentive optimized than we are today. And so I think that's something that we'll be able to share a bit more about, actually not too far out, soon after Whirlpools. We also are planning on releasing community listings. I think that's like what you guys may be familiar with, hearing like permissionless pools described as on other AMMs, so that people will be able to list whatever tokens they want on Orca. It's something we've been planning for a very long time, but I think it'll be quite exciting that people will be able to create not only these like standard AMM pools, but also whirlpools, the concentrated liquidity pools for whatever tokens that they desire. So let's move on to another question. So we have one that was shared beforehand in the AMA channel. Let's see. There was DeFi summer, and then there was the August-September rush to Solana. But since then, a lot of crypto has capitulated. What do you see as a potential event that will drive the next wave to DeFi and or Solana? Thank you, Milkman, for the question.
Sure. Yeah, so I think that's a great question. One thing that I'm excited about, or kind of in anticipation for, is eventual kind of involvement of institutions in DeFi. So, if you kind of look at the long arc of crypto so far, we've seen that, it's only relatively recently that institutions have gotten involved. And I would say like that's a big reason why we saw a lot of the price appreciation in this current cycle, in 2019, I would say like 2020, 2021. But really the only adoption that we've seen from institutions have been in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and to a lesser extent Solana. Solana even now is kind of at the fringes when it comes to institutional adoption, but we haven't seen DeFi tokens, right? And there are real reasons for this. There's still a lot of regulatory uncertainty, and so from an institution's perspective, there's regulatory risk. But if we believe that kind of like DeFi is going to be how a lot of essentially institutions, do their financial activities, then there must be institutional adoption of not just like DeFi protocols, but then the tokens that are being issued by these DeFi protocols. And so, not even just about Orca specifically, but more broadly, I would say that there must be eventually at a point where there is institutional adoption of DeFi. And I kind of see that as kind of a big inflection point in the future. Although, I would say it's hard to predict when exactly that'll happen. Maybe that'll happen at the tail end of this cycle, or maybe it'll happen at the next cycle.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of questions in sort of different categories. I think one that's definitely worth quickly addressing is I see people asking about like special advantages, staking NFTs, etc. So let's see. Let's take Sergey's question. What further utility are planned for NFT Orcanauts?
Yeah. So we have a few ideas in mind. I think one that we'd be happy to share for now is kind of like early access to things, right? So Orcanauts holders, they should have early access to our new features, even if we're beta testing them. I think whirlpools is a pretty whirlpools is something where we'll it's going to basically be a new way to provide liquidity, and it's a new opportunity for liquidity providers, and that's something where we want to give Orcanauts holders early access.
Yep. I would just maybe tack on to that to add that we don't have any plans for Orcanauts to be like staked just to receive money. It's definitely not something where we're going to give direct financial utility for holding Orcanauts. I think of it more as like a fan sort of item where, like by having an Orcanaut, you're part of this like elite crew of people who super love Orca, and, we obviously super love you guys as well. And so that means, closer access, early access to things like this AMA, potentially to new products, still leaving, the opportunities open for different things in the future, but it is not something that I would buy purely just for the hope of, getting a direct airdrop or staking, since that's not really the spirit of Orcanauts. Let's move on to a question about the Solana network. I'm seeing a couple in this theme as well. I think this is from, let's see. Sorry if I butcher anyone's name, Alireza Ashrafi. As we all know, there are many attacks on the Solana network, talking about like the TPS nukes. What solutions do you have to protect our assets?
Yeah, so it's also a great question. So when it comes to protecting assets, so one thing to keep in mind is that even if the Solana network itself experiences a slowdown in transaction throughput or even a halt, your assets are still ultimately protected in the sense that it will never be moved without your permission. And so the biggest risk, which I think is fairly well known, is if you have leverage, essentially. So if you're borrowing money on a lending protocol, or you have leverage on a derivatives protocol. And I guess like in that sense, Orca is a relatively safe place to be, because you're never leveraged, and everything is essentially spot trading of tokens. And then in that sense, it does definitely become a huge inconvenience if you can't trade one token for another. But your assets are always safe. In terms of kind of like my thoughts on the slowdown, I would say, it's hopefully, I hope it was always known that, there would always be kind of like technical hurdles that the Solana team would have to kind of climb over, and that it wouldn't always be, it's not always going to be smooth sailing. That's always been true for any emergent blockchain L1. That was true for Bitcoin, that was true for Ethereum, and it will be true for Solana as well. For us, the reason why we decided to build on Solana is because we believe in the quality of the team. Having talked to Anatoly or other engineers in the Solana team, I do know that like they are actually a top tier team in terms of technical experience and kind of the quality of the engineering team. And so that's what we're ultimately betting on. In terms of the kind of technical challenges that the Solana team has been kind of trying to work through, even in the last few months, I wouldn't say like any of them are kind of fundamental flaws that can't be solved. I think the biggest one will be kind of like dealing with the account state size bloat and the risks of that becoming bigger than a few hundred gigabytes. But that is also true for every other blockchain, including Ethereum as well. And it's a fairly well-known problem that everyone's trying to work through.
Sounds good. I want to change to a slightly different topic. I've seen also another 1 or 2 questions about. Tai Tian Fan says, do you guys hire interns? I want to be a part of the Orca team.
We do not. Yeah, so we do not actively hire interns.
But maybe you can tell everyone a bit about our engineering team.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, right now we have an engineering team of 6, I've already mentioned, including myself. Yeah, I mean, it's currently a fairly good size in the sense that, anything bigger and it becomes kind of difficult for a single engineering man. Like anything bigger, and essentially we'll probably have to split it up into multiple teams. And this current size allows us to move fairly fast. But yeah, I mean, I would never kind of completely shut doors, and I guess we would be open to applications.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the team.
Yeah.
I think the way that we work, it's totally distributed. Everyone's kind of on different time zones, and we've even had 2 folks working on our SDK on like separate time zones, passing it off at the end of the day. They sync at the beginning and the end of the day, and that way we're kind of like always making progress, always taking questions from the community and our partners, and it's been really, really fun seeing this evolve from just like the 2 of us to a fully fledged team. So I think that's just something that makes me really happy to think about. Moving ahead, I want to take this question from Bizod Harry, which is, how can we as a community help you to improve the project more?
Yeah, so, I mean, sure. So I can think of a few things. So one is just like community involvement, just talking to the folks in our Discord channels and Telegram. I think for me personally, I have a slight bias towards Discord. I feel like it's a lot easier to track the different conversations that are happening on Discord. From my perspective, with my day-to-day, I'm as like the engineering manager. I'm always kind of just like looking at things from a technical perspective. So providing contributions in terms of bug fixes or features or suggestions. We've definitely had a lot of kind of like, UI suggestions that we've incorporated from the community, and those have been incredibly helpful. I would also say like thoughtful comments about kind of like tokenomics is something that we're always very open to. I think like, for example, there is a lot of kind of iteration happening in the broader crypto space for tokenomics, right? We have XSushi with SushiSwap. We also have all these VE tokens that were started by Curve, and there have been like different modifications there, different proposals by different people in the space, and just like talking about those different kind of tokenomics models in a thoughtful way, and then giving suggestions for what may or may not fit with the way that Orca is set up. That's something that I love to hear.
Awesome. Hope to see more people from the community engaging Yutaro in some interesting and thoughtful discussions about our tokenomics. I want to bring it back to whirlpools for a second. I think this is a pretty good question from FZZYYTI. Are there novel features in whirlpools that go beyond Uniswap v3?
Yes. I would rather kind of save them for when we actually launch them, but yes, we definitely do. In terms of like what we can talk about, well, one, I will say like we have so much more data in terms of how people will actually use concentrated liquidity AMMs, and that does give us a pretty big advantage in terms of what we need to optimize for. I remember when Uniswap v3 was first announced, it was fairly radical, and I think even if you had invented the concentrated liquidity AMMs, it would have been very hard to predict what how it would have actually been used, or what is the kind of like what is like a framework for providing liquidity for it profitably. We have a much better understanding of that now, and that allows us to kind of constrain the design space a little more and kind of optimize for certain things even more. And yeah, I'll just say like I'm very excited for the announcement. Another thing I'll add is, this may be kind of obvious, but if you've ever provided liquidity for Uniswap v3, you'll know that repositioning is very expensive, and that kind of limits the amount of things that you can do as a liquidity provider. Obviously, with Solana, that becomes much less of an issue, and it's a lot easier to reposition, and that actually opens up the design space a little more in terms of what we can do. So
yeah, I think it opens up the design space. It also opens up a really great opportunity for LPs who might potentially be sort of good target users and be able to quickly learn kind of the skills necessary to successfully LP on a concentrated liquidity AMM. But to be able to deposit with minimal fees rather than, let's say, like $50 a time means that really anyone can try it out with, just a few bucks at a time, which I think is also a pretty huge change. I think this is a pretty good follow-up question as well, which is, what is the main technical challenge that has kept other Solana AMMs from being able to implement LP ranges so far? And do you think they are close behind?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about the technical challenges that we faced. So I think I would say kind of the one that I'm sure everyone else has faced is, well, one, very broadly, the concentrated liquidity AMMs are relatively complicated as far as smart contracts go. If you compare it to a regular AMM, obviously much more complicated. Even if you compare it to, let's say, kind of like a yield farming smart contract, it's much more complicated. So it will, in general, push the limits of any kind of blockchain VM. It has definitely pushed the limits for the EVM, and it is definitely pushing the limits for the Solana VM, but it does it in a way that's slightly different. The Solana VM, the main constraint is that we need to fit everything within the 200K byte size limit, or sorry, compute budget. And yeah, what we found in experience is that, particularly for swaps, which is the most complicated part, it can hit the 200K kind of compute budget fairly quickly. I did try another kind of like concentrated liquidity AMM in beta on Solana about a month ago, and when I tried to swap, it hit a compute budget limit in DevNet. So it does seem like they're kind of experiencing the same issue. And for that, it's really just like kind of like continuous optimization of the code that we're writing. That's kind of the approach that we've been taking, and we've seen kind of pretty good success there. Like, are there other projects that are working on this? Definitely. Do they seem pretty close? Yeah, it seems like they're pretty close.
Yeah. I would just add that if you spend any time around Solana devs, I think you'll hear a lot of discussion about compute budgets.
Sorry, I'm gonna kind of hear it back.
Okay, there's a lot of constraints, I think, when it comes to building on Solana that are pretty challenging for people who may not actually be too experienced with, just building for blockchains in general. Yutaro's long experience building on Ethereum before Solana means he's able to take a pretty balanced approach and ensure that the code quality is really high, and also that we're building in a way that really makes sense for Solana natively. And so even if others come out with the same implementation of concentrated liquidity, in terms of a high level, I think there's a lot of nuance in terms that will determine whether or not it'll be able to basically work smoothly and scale in the long run. And so just because another project has, another implementation of concentrated liquidity doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be as robust. Just my 2 cents. But I actually think this is a pretty good segue into some questions that I've seen around just like competition in general. Vincent Wang, who I think was actually the first one in the meeting today, asked, "What's your take on L1 competition?" And similarly, I think Wings added, do you think grants from competitors like Near will draw builder talent away from the Solana ecosystem?
Yeah. So how do I see L1 competition? I think, the reason why we bet on Solana fairly early on was because we saw that there were kind of fundamental differences with Solana that would allow it to build a technical moat, not just a technical moat, but kind of a moat in terms of developer adoption, user adoption. It doesn't use the EVM, which is one of my favorite things about it, actually. It kind of allows developers to build things that you actually just can't build on other chains. And it's going to be incredibly difficult for these other chains to replicate it because everything has basically been built from the ground up in a very thoughtful way in Solana. But in terms of kind of short term, over the next 2 years, I do see a lot of competition from other L1s. And a big reason why is because there are so many L1s that have a huge treasury, and the question asked, because they have such a huge treasury, it's kind of it's easy to kind of pay money to get developer adoption. And I see this as fairly similar to kind of the yield farming craze in DeFi summer, where DeFi itself boomed across the board, and then a lot of these protocols found themselves with huge treasuries that allowed them to provide a lot of incentives for their own protocol, right? So that's when we saw so many different altcoins that were being, alt AMMs or alt DeFi protocols that were providing high yield farm incentives. But then, ultimately, when the dust settled, which it did, we saw kind of essentially the winners at the top, and that's what I'll see. That's what I expect to see with these L1s. I do expect there to be kind of a lot of competition over, if I had to guess, the next 6 to 18 month time frame. But I do expect afterwards for the dust to settle. And I do expect essentially Ethereum, Solana, and yeah, I definitely expect those two to be the top 2 competitors. And in terms of Ethereum versus Solana, it's kind of hard to say. I expect Ethereum to kind of be around, but I definitely expect Solana to have to be in a very strong position even 2 years from now.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And I'm looking at the questions that were asked before in the Yutaro AMA channel, and I think this one is just hilarious. So it deserves asking. From Mighty Mouse, he would like to know, what is your favorite Japanese whiskey?
I don't drink Japanese whiskey. Well, now I hardly drink. I'm sorry, Mighty Mouse. I'm sorry to disappoint. When I was younger, I drank more Irish whiskey, like Bushmills. But if someone offered me some Japanese whiskey, I would I would happily oblige.
Based on my observation as a keenly and carefully trained design researcher, I would say that Yutaro's favorite Japanese whiskey is actually a Yabisu beer. But moving forward, I think we could maybe take this question from Amir Hosseini, which is, how important is community activity to you, I guess, in general?
Yeah, incredibly important. And the community is essentially what is kind of going to shape Orca into what it is. Like the brand and the image that we have is literally just shaped by the community and the feedback that we get from the community. I felt that in a very real way when I kind of met people in person at the Solana conference in Lisbon last year. And ultimately, this is a community governed project and will continue to be more of a community governed project. And that's going to be our priority, in 2022.
And in addition, I think another one that we could quickly address, although I can't read this person's name since I can't read this script, so sorry, is, did you raise capital?
Yeah, so we raised capital. We raised capital in, I think we closed it in around we closed in around September, I believe. And I think this is all public information, but we raised $19 million, $19.6 million, and sold around, I think how much did we sell in terms of tokens, if you remember? I think it was like a little less than 10% of the total supply.
Around 18 point something.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, that was our only fundraise. So we haven't sold any other tokens to investors before or after that.
Yep, which I think is a personally pretty exciting number that is very, very fair in terms of reserving the vast majority of our tokens for the community. That was something that we committed to with our fair launch early on. And yeah, I think it's generally something that we feel pretty good about as a team, and we're super proud and excited to have investors like Polychain, Placeholder, 3 Arrows, among many others, among the people who are involved in the Orca community. I'm seeing a bunch of questions around POAPs. So do you give POAPs today for our participants? This is a question from George Campos.
Honestly, this seems like a sloth question.
We didn't plan one, but I mean, we could distribute some starfish to people on the call. If you guys want to send me your wallet address to chris@orca.so, I can coordinate that.
Yeah, maybe we can do it for the folks whose questions were answered. I think that'd be fun. The people who got to participate and ask some good questions would definitely deserve our starfish, which is our community collectible.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot, Sloth.
That's all right.
That's our friendly community manager. I am Sloth/Slothnot. Always loved that little change. But yeah, I think this one's a pretty interesting question. What do you think about the Genesis Go SCC model, since you're a developer and NFT creator like them? And also, do you want to go surf down in Newport sometime? I'll bring the soft tops and wetties, no worries, says Mighty Mouse.
Yeah. Wait, sorry, can you, the first part of the question?
Yeah, I'll ask you the more blockchain related one first,
Okay.
which is, what do you think about the Genesis Go SCC model, which we had mentioned earlier was this sort of NFT based launch.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, the first thought that came to my head, to be honest, was, it seems like a potentially clever, potentially like dangerous way of trying to skirt regulations by, using NFTs almost like fungible tokens in a way that is like security-like. But it does, it has like attracted a ton of attention, and I know you know, a lot of people have talked to me before this, like a lot of people have talked to me about it and asked me kind of my thoughts on it. So it's clearly done a great job of kind of marketing Genesis Go, and kind of bringing attention and then creating community around the project. I also know that you know, their product itself is fairly good. You know, they do provide a very good RPC service. So you know, I think the idea of using NFTs to bootstrap a community, I think it's a great idea. I also think just it's interesting how, you know, at that point, it becomes kind of like more similar to the ICO model, or kind of more similar to, you know, something that is like security like. And so, you know, we see this fairly often, right? Where like kind of the difference between NFTs and fungible tokens, they kind of bleed after a while, and it becomes harder to tell the difference. And I think the second question was, do I want to go surf down in Newport sometime? Yeah, sure, like totally down. I'm not a very good surfer. I only started surfing for the first time last year, but I'm you know, down to surf some more.
Probably be a healthy thing. Just focusing on all these digital whirlpools is probably not as good for you. So good to have a little bit of balance.
Yeah.
I want to put out a call for final questions, since we'll be wrapping up relatively soon. So if you have any others, feel free to drop them in the chat box. I've seen some people raising the hand using the Google Meet function. All the questions I'm taking are coming directly from the chat. So please go ahead and put them there. John Nako asks as well, great AMA, thanks. How can we contribute as developers?
Yeah, so yes, great question. One is, if you haven't taken a look at the TypeScript SDK yet, I highly encourage you to take a look at that. And then, you know, I think we try to write it in a way that's fairly easy to use, and happy to kind of like spitball ideas on what can be built. I would say if you are a developer and you want to contribute, you know, wait. I would ask, like, yeah, I know like crypto moves incredibly fast, but I would potentially wait for maybe like 3 to 4 weeks. There may be a new kind of SDK like thing that's brand new, that's like innovative, and will allow you to kind of potentially build a first of its kind product on top of a new kind of like foundation. So yeah, I would say kind of like keep an eye out for any kind of announcements coming from Orca in the next few weeks, and there may be some new SDKs for you to play with.
Did I just hear some alpha being dropped?
Maybe.
I think I heard some alpha on the floor.
Yeah.
But I think another question that we actually have gotten pretty often throughout Orca's lifecycle, which is any integration plan with Serum Order Book to tap into the ecosystem liquidity?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, well, right now, like what's happening and what will continue to happen is that there will be aggregators on top of Orca that will aggregate orders between Orca and Serum and other kind of like DEXs in the Solana ecosystem. And I'll see that continue to happen. In terms of direct partnerships, or kind of like directly routing orders from Serum on the Orca interface, I don't really expect that to happen. And you know, I think products or other aggregators will do a much better job of doing that, and we'll continue to focus on building the best AMM in Solana.
Actually, that reminds me that we should mention, kind of related to the last question around how developers can help out, is that there may or may not, I think, be another hackathon coming in the near future for the Solana ecosystem as a whole. If that happens, you know, I think Orca will definitely be involved in some way, and in general, we are very happy to potentially give prizes for for good implementations built on top of this Orca SDK that we're very proud of. I think and our team has been working super hard on. So shout out to our engineers, Scuba and Atamari, who you may see in the channels answering questions about our SDK sometime. Please do try it out. They're very responsive and happy to help you if you have any questions. Let's see, maybe one more question. I've seen a bunch of questions sort of related to collaborations. So Alexis Wengraf just asked, any collabs planned with other platforms and teams? And I've seen a few others that are also specifically related to NFT collabs. So maybe you can address both.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I mean, cross promotion is, just a great way to kind of promote products across communities. That's something that we have been doing and will continue to do. When it comes to NFTs, yeah, I mean, I would love to see kind of more. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see more kind of NFT partnerships that are kind of like thematically or just like philosophically aligned. The way that we launched Orcanauts was with kind of like a fairly specific mission in mind, at least initially, which was kind of like, how can we kind of like get more awareness for like DeFi education. And so, anything along the same lines there would be great. Yeah. If you don't want to add anything, Ori?
Yeah, actually, I do think this falls into a slightly different theme, but I actually did say one final question, which I think I can actually take, which about collaborations, which Edric says, I understand that Orca is a charity ecosystem, but won't bigger and better partnerships yield larger charity work? And so, well, first of all, I guess I wouldn't really call Orca a charity ecosystem, although, making donations and generally supporting other organizations and like causes that we care about is something that's very core to Orca's values. I think ultimately Orca is ultimately a AMM and a place to come trade and provide liquidity, and that's sort of the core of what we do. We are very proud of the donation that we're making to Aflatoon through the Orcanauts NFT, which will go to supporting crypto education and more generally digital currency education for youth in areas of the world where that may not have so much access to high quality information about this sort of up and coming change to our financial system, which we are, again, very excited about and working with them kind of closely on. But we also have the Orca Impact Fund, which has been collecting 1 BIP of trading fees since we launched our aqua farms back in August. I believe we've accumulated also over $1 million in there, at least perhaps several million. And the theme of the Impact Fund more generally is around climate change and sustainability. And so our community voted to donate our first sort of round of donations through this fund to a nonprofit called the Ocean Conservancy back earlier in fall this year or last year. And we'll be sharing more details around sort of the charter of the Impact Fund, how those funds will be used, and generally how we think about responsible, effective altruism essentially on the Orca team. But I think we're pretty much out of time for today. Thank you all so much for joining the AMA. Really excited to see so many people just, here supporting Orca and also with questions. I'm sure we'll be back before too long. And in general, if you have questions, we always encourage you to put them in Discord. We're always listening. Any final notes that you would like to add, Slothnaut?
No, just thank you to everybody for joining us today, and looking forward to the next time we get together.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I think as we mentioned towards the end, we will be able to give Starfish for those whose questions were selected by me, I guess. So if you heard your question called out, I think I read out the names. Feel free to send chris@orca.so the question that you asked, just so that you can verify that that was actually the one that was picked. We'll have the chat transcript so that you can receive your Starfish collectible, which is really cute and just for fun. Anything else, Yutaro?
No, I mean, thank you. This is actually a lot of fun. So, you know, I think it's kind of great to just be able to chat with everyone. So, yeah, maybe we can do this again at some point. And yeah, thank you for kind of being part of this ride. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work, but it's also been a lot of fun. And yeah, pretty excited for the rest of this year.
Maybe
Yeah.
not on Google Meet next time though, because we'll be friends.
Yeah, it's always a learning process.
Difficulties. Yeah, and then someone asked it how I can manage to talk and answer questions in the chat at the same time. It is actually me doing both. I just have two brains going at all times, one for talking and one for chatting. So it's an important skill for the digital age. Thank you, everyone, and I'm sure we'll see you again before long.
All right, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
And yes, John, Nako, please do ask the rest of your questions in Discord. We are always watching out. So see you over there.